Hello, everybody. It's James here with WSI, and we'll do some plugs first. Owen, Hart and the Rock books that I've written. You can find them on Amazon. And my guest, he's written a book as well. Truth be told, critically acclaimed as well. He is the Cauliflower Club. I'm not doing another intro. President of he is B. Brian Blair. How you doing?
Doing great, James. How's everything in England, brother?
That was upbeat. Yeah, no, I'm doing okay. Don told me to call you Bieber.
Bieber. Oh, yes. Don Morocco. The Rock, the original Rock. Don Morocco, I cannot say enough good things about Don Morocco. He was a mentor, just a partner in
Crime.
fun crime. I was gonna say a partner in crime, but I had to tame it with something, but fun crime, you might say, or non-violent crime. Um, I guess some of it was violent against each other, I should say. But golly, Don and I have had so much fun together over the years, especially in the Florida territory, uh, WWE, WWF, Hawaii, just all over. Don is he's a legend in Hawaii, and he's a legend in the wrestling industry all over the world. And I love Don. Had a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah, he's a right guy. Someone's at your door. I've got a couple of questions about Don that I'm going to have to ask about, and I read a few stories in your book, Truth Be Told. I will be referencing it for you. I know you're going to be referencing it as well. And I won't ask one about the mother and daughter. I will ask the one about Jack. I can ask about the mother and daughter if you like.
No, 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 no.
Oh, okay.
Let's go to the next one.
Read the book.
You got to buy the book. Truth be told, to read that one.
Rightly so. But we can talk about Maui Wowie and Don's hookup, and he was always the best guy to get the sticky icky from.
Well, it so happened, I'm probably a month into the business, maybe not even that, and the Briscoes had pulled lots of ribs on me. Of course, Morocco helped them, assisted them in some of the ribs that they pulled on me, some of the jokes. It was a constant. When you're a rookie, you're constantly getting ribs or jokes pulled on you, and it's nonstop, and it's at your expense and at the boys' delight. Um, but this happened to be the situation you're referring to, James, is when we were on the way back from Tallahassee, or along that way. It could have been one of the smaller towns there, but we were in the Chiefland area, which is notorious for police. And apparently, we were speeding, but before we were speeding, I know Jack had slowed down, because I remember Gerald told him to slow down. We were in Jack Briscoe's brand new 1977, 78 Bill Blass Lincoln Continental. And Jack was driving, Gerald was in the front seat, I was behind Gerald, and Don Morocco was in the back seat with me. And everybody's happy. I guess Don had brought this bag of Maui Wowie pot from Hawaii, and very expensive stuff, especially at the time. And we did things. I pray that other people don't get the idea to do any of these things because they were foolish. And you look back sometimes at the things that you do as adults, and you think, well, what a fool I was, or how foolish that was. The outcome could have been a lot worse. But we're after it's after the matches. The beers are being passed around. Of course, I'm the bartender. They make me do everything. And the car is full of smoke, and all of a sudden, we see the flashing lights behind us. And I'm thinking to myself, this is it. I haven't even been in the business for a month, and I'm about to go to jail. I'm about to lose everything that I've worked so hard for, and I'm really, really scared. And these guys are just, oh, just be cool, everything's all right. Jack's not really commenting. He's not just, I guess he was just happy at the time. And God, I can't believe it. He's getting closer. The highway patrolman's getting closer, and all of a sudden there's nothing to do, but they're telling me, get that pot out of this car, get the pot. So crack the door and dumping the Don's pot where I could, and Um, People were, it's like there's a lot of confusion in the car. Everybody's telling you to do this or do that, do this, do that. I dump the pot out, the door shut. All of a sudden, Jack Briscoe just opens the door, and it was like Cheech and Chong. And the highway patrolman, he's standing there. Jack opens the door and stands up. And the guy goes, we're all scared to death. I don't know what it was about Jack, but he feared nothing. And he just figured if he was going to jail, he was going to jail. But he had a big smile on his face, obviously, a natural smile. And he said, yes, sir, officer. And the officer goes, Jack Briscoe, I can't believe it. You're my favorite wrestler. I couldn't wait to meet you. I just can't believe that you're here. And marijuana smoke's going in his face, and there's beer cans in the car, and all he's worried about is Jack Briscoe. I can't believe this. I'm listening to this, and it's like something from a fantasy, like it's a dream, but it's a reality. And he goes, I would have never known it was you, except I stopped Pat Patterson about 10 minutes ago, and he told me you'd be coming through in this Bill Blast Lincoln Continental. And as soon as I saw it, I knew I was going to meet my hero. And here I am. Boy, would you, all I want, Jack, is an autographed photo. And I don't think Jack had any autographed photos, but he's getting things to sign. He's looking in the glove compartment. I don't know what he came out with, but long story, he appeased the officer, and unbelievably, the officer lets us go. And he takes off, and all I'm hearing is, get the pot, get the pot, get the pot. They're all worried about the pot. And I'm just grateful, so grateful to God that we did not go to jail. I can't believe that Pat Patterson, knowing that Jack and Gerald were going to be, have beer in the car at least, would tell the officer to pull Jack over. But I guess, it humored the officer, and it just wound up being a long story. I think by the time they made me get the flashlight weeds backed up so the headlights could be on there, and I'm telling them not to do this because the cop's going to come back. And anyway, I think he wound up getting like maybe 25% of his marijuana back, and it was one of the scariest times of my life, James.
I bet it was as well. I mean, I don't know what the drug laws and the penalties were for carrying at that time, but they strike me as
all gone to jail.
Yeah, unusually high, I'm sure.
Yes, we could have all gone to jail for sure.
Right. I have a billion questions to ask you, so I have to be quite judicious of what I'm going to go for. But it's going to be another Don Morocco question. I'm sorry. Did you, because I know you're in the company with WWF, but I'm not sure you were in Florida, of any of the times that Don was fired for doing something?
I was never around when Don was fired. I often wondered why Don didn't get a bigger push. I thought he should have had the strap. Same thing with the Killer Bees. I mean, we were promised the straps 3 times, and our action figures even have the straps, one of the sets of them. But that's another story. But I really thought Don should have had the straps, and I don't know why. I don't know. They came down pretty hard with the drug testing. I don't know if that was a problem. I have no idea, James.
Oh, well, he's explained there was an issue with Nick Bockwinkel, but that'll be a time for him to explain to you if ever hook you to up for a podcast. I'm trying to think where to go next, and what I'm probably going to ask. Training with Hiro Matsuda. Now, obviously an incredible taskmaster, huge respect for the business. Ricky Dozan, he was a student of.
Yes.
Why, and I understand the theory behind it, but why and how many good young prospects did Hiro Matsuda run off by just running him too hard on the first day?
Well, he ran Danny Spivey off, who turned out to be a great wrestler. He ran off Razor Ramon, God bless him. He ran off, I think Scott wound up coming back. He was, out of the 3 summers that I went through the dungeon, 3.5 actually, the only 3 people that made it were Hogan, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, and myself. Over 100 people left, and most of them without their clothes, because it was brutal. You'd have to do 500 push-ups, sets of 100 at a time, 500 sit-ups, wrestle until you just wrestling is like in college, 3 3-minute rounds. You'd wrestle 10 minutes straight without a break. And after that, then they would teach you the art of hooking. And, that's when you bend joints where they're not supposed to be bent. And it hurts, and you can break a lot of bones, and a lot of bones were broken over the summers. And a lot of people left bloodied and battered. It was a tough time. It wasn't like today where you pay somebody, $1,500 to train you and you become a professional wrestler. Back then, Eddie Graham was very strict. He wanted to make sure that he always told the boys, he goes, look, if you guys ever get beat up by a mark, you're out of this territory. You're gone. And he said, I don't care if one of you guys if a wrestler beats up another wrestler, that's okay. He said, but don't ever get beat up by a mark, by a wrestling fan or whatever. That's the way it was called back then. And so he made sure that all of his pupils were tough. And besides Hiro, Carl Gotch from Wiggins, tremendous hooker. He would come down and stretch the heck out of his so many good guys. Gordon Nelson, and then of course Bob Backlund, Jack Briscoe, all the guys that were really, really good amateur wrestlers were down there with us. And we were very fortunate that we had so many good people that would come and work with us and teach us the art of hooking and teach us. And then later on, as we kind of graduated into and were trusted into the being smartened up, so to speak, and being able to actually start learning the ropes of professional wrestling, had wonderful people come down and continue to train with us, Gerald Briscoe, Don Morocco. So many people would come down and teach us things. Bob Orton Jr. was around a lot, Steve Kern, just great people.
One person you didn't mention was, and he writes the afterword, in truth be told. I'm going to do an intro for the book anyway, but I'm sort of like introing the book at every question anyway. Hulk Hogan, and he ends up, we all know the story, he ends up getting his ankle broken in the first 30 seconds. What was Hiro Matsuda looking for as far as someone who he wanted to hurt right away and run off right away? What was it about Hogan that he didn't like?
Well, this story's gotten bent out of shape from the way it really was, because Hogan was training with me when I left, and he actually had his first match with me as a Super Destroyer. So his ankle hadn't been touched, and he had been through hell with Hiro. And to be honest with you, Terry is a lot tougher than a lot of people think. He learned a lot of hooking, and he's just a strong guy. And he was just a nice guy, and he was never an aggressive person. He was a good athlete. He was a heck of a guitar player. I used to sneak into the bar called The Other Place and watch him play in a band called Ruckus. And he had these big platforms. He was already 6'7", 6'8", and had these big platforms on. So he was like 7'2" with his long blonde hair and the bass guitar. And so he was the show in itself. And then I'd see him in the Armory when Tuesday night came around, and lo and behold, he wound up down in the dungeon. But when he was in the dungeon, he made it through the dungeon, and he made it to the point where he became the Super Destroyer. They didn't know what to do with him, so they put him in a mask. We had our first match in Chiefland, and of course that turned into a big rib. It's funny. That's in the book, truth be told. But I know Vern shot on him, and Vern Gagne one time, and he sprawled and hooked Vern Gagne. And all the boys were witnesses of that. Brad Reagans and several other people at that time. But when I left and went to Louisiana to Bill Watts' territory, my first territory, Terry was doing good, and we kind of lost touch because I was on to bigger and better things, and Terry was still in Florida. Well, apparently there was some kind of he got tired of the way they were using him or whatever. And then he came back. And when he came back, that's when Hiro broke his ankle.
Right. What was the reasoning, or was there ever a reason given?
I do not know, honestly, why Hiro broke his ankle, other than once in a while, Hiro would have a tough time with Terry. And Terry could get him he was learning enough to get him into compromising positions. And, before I left, I was the enforcer, what's called the enforcer so I had to go stretch all the people and do all that kind of stuff. But trying to stretch Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff and Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan, was very difficult. Although it happened a little bit, we got smart enough to start working with each other a little bit. And without, it was like that old, what I always heard about they did in Portland, working the shoot, and Elton Owens would give these guys like an extra $15 or $20 to have a shoot for 15 minutes or 10 minutes. And the guys would go out there and work that a little bit. But we were getting smart enough where we knew we had already been through enough hell. And we would start loosening up on each other and just, kind of working our shoots. And, but nonetheless, you can't take anything away from Terry. And you can't take away from anything from Paul. Neither one of them had amateur wrestling backgrounds. Paul was a football player and a bodybuilder, and Hulkster was a bodybuilder and a baseball player. But both of them were athletes in their own right. I'm so sorry about this phone going off. Excuse me, I thought I turned that off. But both of them were athletes in their own right, and good athletes, good people. And again, I don't know exactly what happened, other than Hiro did break his ankle.
I'll ask this then, and I make the contention, and some people will argue against me, but I'm right, is that Hulk Hogan was a really good wrestler. He could sell like nobody's business, and he had tons of great matches until probably maybe the late 80s, when his body, he could feel, was maybe failing him, and he ended up in the routine. But I don't think enough people appreciate him as just a pure wrestler or a pure worker.
No, I agree, James. And he had a lot of matches in Japan where, mat wrestling is, it's not, Japan is totally different. The psychology, at least New Japan Pro Wrestling, where I always went, I spent 2.5 years of my life there. And, Terry could work any style. So he could do chain wrestling. I did chain wrestling with him. That's what we did during our first match, primarily. And he could do high spots. He's a great psychologist. And the main thing, Terry knew how to take care of himself. And he knew, just like everybody should know, that if you don't take care of yourself in this business, nobody else is going to take care of you.
Absolutely. And there's so many questions I wanted to ask about Mid-South, so many questions I wanted to ask about Japan. I've not written any of them down because of time constraints. But I will ask this. Is Paul Orndorff one of your best friends for many decades? Were there any stories in the book, or that you wanted to write for the book, that you ended up either forgetting about, or that you just couldn't write that now you want to tell?
Well, actually, the book would have been about 1,000 pages had we put everything in there. That's why I'm as many books as we've sold, that I'm considering writing a second version of the book. And yes, James, there are a lot of stories that I didn't put in, or that didn't make it into the book. There are a lot of Paul Orndorff stories. Paul was great. Everything with Paul and I, it was a rib. He was like a big brother to me. And because I used to sell sodas in the Tampa Stadium. When I was 13 years old, I was selling sodas in the Tampa Stadium. And Paul Orndorff actually came when I was 14 years old to the Spartans. And I got to watch him for 4 years there. He was a stud. He got drafted by the Saints. He was just University of Tampa was number one in the nation 2 out of the 4 years he was there. He was with guys like uh, Freddie Solomon, who the only person that broke Freddie Solomon's NFL records were Jerry Rice on the 49ers. He was with John Matuzak, the tremendous defensive tackle for the Oakland Raiders. So many pros came out of the University of Tampa Spartans, where Paul played football. And, again, number 40, Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, he was a stud and a half. And, I still, I miss Paul all the time, actually. And, I just, the stories are, I don't know where to begin, James. There's so many. I mean, just maybe you could set one off for me.
Well, actually, I'd like to ask a more serious question about Paul. Is in the last few years of his life, he was dealing with dementia, Alzheimer's, basically memory problems that ended up consuming him and taking his life, sadly. As the president of Cauliflower Alley Club, I can never seem to say that for some reason. CAC is how many wrestlers that you help are dealing with post-concussion syndrome or early stages of dementia that are part and parcel of the business?
We've helped them several that have gone through or going through dementia. We don't mention names, James, unless they give us permission, like Paul gave us permission. Of course, Bobby Heenan, Kamala, people that made millions of dollars in the business all of a sudden found themselves on difficult financial times, mostly because of medical bills, insurance, maybe divorces, but primarily medical bills and the lack of insurance. We don't have socialized medicine like you do in England. And so guys would just need help, and the Cauliflower Alley Club is always there to help. We've given away hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we don't. It's not a loan. We give the money to these people that need the help. If they reach the maximum that the CAC can help them with, we'll open up a GoFundMe account to subsidize what the CAC is allowed to give per their bylaws. And of course, the board can always vote to give more. But, we try to be good stewards of the people's money so that there's money for the next person that needs help.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a bit of a misnomer that CAC is only, giving awards once a year and a banquet. But no, the CAC helps wrestlers
every day,
year round.
Year round. Every day we are involved. We're either taking in new memberships, sending out membership renewals. Rich Ingley, our executive vice president, he does a tremendous job at making sure that all of this stuff is done on time in a timely manner. Ron Hutchison runs the website. Royal Duncan, when you join the Cauliflower Alley Club, you get 4 copies of The Ear. Vance Nevada and Royal Duncan do a tremendous job in getting our award-winning newsletter out. You get 3 or 4 issues every year for $25, $35, whatever it is a year. And you can join for a lifetime. I think it's $500 overseas, $350 in the States, but it's getting ready to go up because everything's going up, unfortunately. And we have our 56th, that should be our 57th reunion, coming up in Las Vegas, September 26th, 27th, and 28th. And we have got a tremendous slate of honorees. A tremendous slate. Jerry Lawler will be receiving the President's Award. And JBL will be receiving the Iron Mike Award. Conan will be receiving the Lucha Libre Award. We have Tommy Rich and Kevin Sullivan getting men's wrestling awards. We have the 2 of my favorite guys, a lot of fun, Ricky Orton and Robert Gibson, Rock and Roll Express, winning the tag team awards. There's more and more. It goes on. And so it's going to be a blast. And it only costs $150 for a reunion ticket. That covers 2 wonderful meals and the honorees presentations. You can play cribbage. You can compete in a bowling tournament. There's all kinds of different events that we have for our members. We'll be downtown this year for the first time at the Plaza Hotel, the newly remodeled Plaza Hotel and Casino. And it's going to be a blast. We have rooms for $39 a night. You just can't beat that. And it's our largest fundraiser of the year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are going to move on now. I'm going to give you a little game.
Okay.
And I call it name association. Basically, you cannot say yourself. I'm going to give you a sentence, a descriptor, and you tell me who best fits that description. And if there's a little story that goes along with it, then please throw it in there. And the first one is funniest person in the locker room.
Golly, I'd say Bret Hart. And why? Because Bret Hart drew these consistently, would find or send somebody to get chalk, and he would draw the greatest animations. I mean, Bret entertained everybody by doing this. I mean, there were some funny things that happened, but consistently, day in and day out, everybody looked forward to seeing Bret's drawing and what the joke would be. He actually did one very quickly where, everybody knew that Pat was gay and that Chief Jay Strongbone was cheap. So they were driving along. Now you got to kind of picture that Bret's doing the drawing to this. And so they're walking along and they get hit by a car and they go up to the pearly gates, and St. Peter comes out, and they're just wondering, what happened. And St. Peter comes out and says, Pat, we really love you up here, and but God has asked you not to be gay. And he goes, oh, I won't be gay anymore. I promise. Just give me another chance. So poof, St. Peter gives Pat another chance. And then Chief Jay Strongbow, St. Peter says, Chief, you've been just the cheapest guy in not only the wrestling industry, the cheapest guy that we've observed on the earth. And Chief says, oh, I promise you, I'll never be cheap again. Just please give me another chance. So poof, he comes back on earth, and they're back in the same place they got hit by the car, according to this drawing that Bret's drawing, and the little captions. And then all of a sudden they're walking along, and there's a big shiny copper penny that Bret drew, and Pat sees the penny and he starts walking toward it, and Chief sees the penny and he starts walking toward it, but Chief bends over first to pick up the penny, and poof, they both disappear.
Man, how big was the blackboard to describe all this?
The way he did it was fabulous. It doesn't have to be. You got it. Just Bret's clever, and he actually did a unique, one of a kind drawing of the Hart Foundation and the Killer Bees in my book, Truth Be Told. Here, he actually did a drawing just for the book, besides doing a forward. Thank you so much, Bret. I can't ever thank him enough. We actually named our son Brett after Bret Hart. We Americanized it, though. My wife insists. Put 2 T's in it. So Bret's been just a friend and an entertainer in the locker room, somebody that's made people smile all the time.
Next one is last man standing at the bar.
Would be Mr. Fuji.
Really? I've never, in the 50 times or something I've asked that, I've never had Mr. Fuji as an answer.
Yes, Mr. Fuji was a master. He got Outback Jack. He put together this whole angle because Outback Jack was a big bragger. And, I like Jack. He's a decent guy, but he kind of believed his gimmick, that Outback Jack gimmick. And the Bulldogs would just drive him nuts. One day, the Outback had the big old knife that he had. He wanted to actually kill him because they cut the crocodile off the back of his jacket. They did everything. And he turned around and gave Matilda X-Lax. It went on and went on. So now they're going to have Fuji says they got to settle the score and have a drinking contest. And we're in San Francisco at the Holiday Inn. And after the matches, it's going to be Davy Boy against Outback, and of course Dynamite's there, Fuji's there, but the referee is Mr. Fuji. And this is why I say he's the last man standing, because every time one of them would get Outback's attention, and Fuji would drop a couple halcyons or whatever in somebody's drink. And Fuji never got drinking under the table. He was always the last man standing. And I've seen a lot of people come and go, but that particular night, Jack finally fell. Brunzell was there as well. Besides the Bulldogs, there were a lot of the guys there, and he fell completely, just bam, flat on his back. And he looked up and he said, "Fuji, you put some shit in my drink, mate. I know you did." He goes, "Because I cannot drink all three of you, blah, blah, blah." So he's still bragging. Anyway, Jimmy and I get him and try to take him back to the room, but the Bulldogs are peeing on him. And I'm saying, "Oh man, come on, guys, don't pee on him like this. This is terrible." And Brunsey was peed too. And so, finally they stop peeing on him, and we get him to his room, and Dynamite couldn't help it. Got to pee on him one more time, right in his face. And Outback turns around and can barely look up, and he says, "I've been pissed on by better blokes than you." And I'll never forget that. So later on that night, James, Jimmy and I are hungry, so we go to the restaurant there. There's it's really decorated nice, and you can either sit at the bar and eat or in these seats. And all of a sudden, this guy opens this door. We look, it's Outback. He's completely naked. He only has on his cowboy boots and his hat. And he sits at the he sits at the bar, and he orders some food and orders something. We're at a table a little bit back, and we're trying to hide, we want to make sure nobody knows that he's not with us. And he gets up and he starts peeing in the palm tree, the fake palm tree inside the restaurant. Oh my gosh, cops wind up coming in, and they wound up letting him go that night. But sorry for the long story, but last man standing, Mr. Fuji.
Well, he probably stank of piss, so they wanted to get him out of the jail as quickly as possible. Did you ever...
they were kind. They didn't take him to jail, actually. They took him back to his room, and they laughed.
Did you ever see the time when Outback Jack got his hat glued to his head?
I was there. Yes, I was there. It was in, we were in a town in California. I think it was Sacramento. And he would always put his hat upside down when he was all showered and everything. He was kind of a ritual guy. He had this special ritual. And so again, it's Dynamite Kid. And another funny thing happened that night, right before that. But Dynamite got Outback's attention where they timed it pretty darn decent. And Davey got the super glue, rubbed it around all the rim of his hat as good as he could down. They're talking. Davey stops. So naturally now the next move is for Outback to grab his hat. They pulled it off so slyly. I watched this happen and I'm going, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this." So Outback puts his hat on, and they're talking, and they kept talking some more because they wanted that super glue to dry really good. So they're asking him more questions. And because his last thing was always he'd bend over and take his hat off and say, "Good day, mates," and or tally ho, whatever he would say when he left. Tally ho, mates. And so he goes to do that at the end, and he starts pulling on his hat, and it won't come off. The next day we see him, he just leaves it. The next day we see him, and he's got no hair around here. And he tried to get his hair closer, but he couldn't get it close enough where he could still see the rim where it pulled out all the hair and all half of his skin on his head. Oh, they were cruel.
Was that the last straw for Outback, or what sort of made him sort of leave for good, or was he fired?
I really can't answer that question, James. We were running 3 towns a night back then, and pretty soon, we didn't see Jack. So I don't honestly know what happened, how he wound up leaving. But there was several back and forth altercations and stories.
Well, it's probably best that he left before God knows what was glued to him next. A few more questions then. Smelliest wrestler?
Wow. Buddy Roberts of the Freebirds.
Quite a few people have said Buddy Roberts, would you believe?
Did they ever tell you the story about the possum in New Orleans?
Yes, they did. The maggots.
Yes, with the maggots. And he put on that same outfit after Grizzly Smith threw up all over in New Orleans. He put on that same outfit down in New Orleans. I was there, put on the same outfit and went out to the ring, and that had sat with that dead possum all weekend in the sun. And there were maggots in the possum and maggots all over. And he just carried on like it was no big deal, put the outfit on and went out there. But when you, every other time you'd wrestle with him too, Jerry wasn't, he wasn't good about it, keeping his gear clean.
Next one is the most dangerous situation you ever found yourself in.
I was in, I should be dead right now. I was in Saipan, and Brady Boone was there. And we went into this bar, and when we went into this bar, we sat down, and a couple girls came up to the table. We didn't know who they were. And they were just being nice, brought us a couple drinks. And people were giving us strange looks because I think they didn't like the idea of, because it was all Saipanese. And there was a security guard, actually two security guards, one by each exit. There was a back exit and there was a front exit. And they had guns, you know, long rifles. And so I felt like I would be okay. You know, I felt pretty secure. We sat down, and all of a sudden a girl reaches over and kisses Brady. Just grabbed him and kissed him. I don't know what happened. And a cigarette butt hits Brady, and he looks around, and we didn't see anything. I don't know how I got there. And then that other girl grabbed me and kissed me, and boom, more cigarette butts hit the table. Well, before too long, these guys jump up and they start yelling at us in Saipanese. I don't know what they're saying. And these two girls get up and start yelling back in Saipanese. And we had a car right outside the door. And all I was thinking about is, God, how are we going to get to the car? How are we going to get to the car? So I looked at, when all these people popped up, like 12 people, and there was probably 100 people in this small bar, smoke-filled bar, and no windows, just the doors, and the band playing. And I guess these security guys saw the whole thing going on at the same time, but all of a sudden, boom, the bottles break from these guys. And now they've got these jagged bottles. And I look over at the security guy, and he does like the old heel move where you want to turn babyface, you turn around and leave your partner. Well, they turned around and gave us their back and walked the other way and pretend like they saw nothing. And so all of a sudden these girls grabbed these bottles too. And now they're in front of us, and we've got our back against the wall, and we're wiggling, trying to get to the wall, and bottles are going. Somebody got their wrist sliced, and things are flying, and we're getting hit with crap. And by some kind of a miracle, we got outside the door and into that rental car and took off out of there and never came back. But I thought we were dying that day. It was that scary.
Man, do you know, because you mentioned Brady Boone, there's a name that's never come up on any show I've ever done. And I remember seeing some of these old reruns. I was a bit too young to watch them at the time. But Brady Boone, man, he was really talented dude. He was like a pre-Rob Van Dam, really athletic.
very athletic. Reminded me of maybe a miniature Rick Rude, not a miniature, but a smaller version of Rick Rude. Sometime they were from the same place, Robbinsdale, Minnesota, where Kurt Hennig and many of the Road Warriors and many of the guys were from. Dean Peters Brady Boone was a super guy, and Dean Peters was his real name. And he worked for me at my Gold's Gyms for a few years, and met his wife Sherry there and had children. And unfortunately, he had a car accident and drove off of like a viaduct and died. And he died way too young. Great guy, great athlete, great worker. If he would have been 4 inches taller, he would have gone a long way.
Yeah, I think so as well. I'll give you a few more, then we'll move on. The most miserable wrestler to hang around with.
Oh gosh. Well, I'd say Mr. Wonderful was probably although he would be miserable, he was so much fun in his misery that because he was always complaining about something, always, especially in Japan. Oh, that's where Big John Studd named Paul Oscar the Grouch on the bus in Japan. We were on a 6-week tour, and about the second week, Paul, he just couldn't stand it. Paul was just, he was a chick magnet. If you cut Paul's head open, a bunch of women would come out. It was a long time for Paul to be gone. And everything turned out griping, miserable, griping every day. Everybody was getting tired of it. And Big John Studd goes, Paul, my kids watch a show called Sesame Street. And there's this ugly purple guy that comes out of the trash can. His name's Oscar the Grouch. And you remind me just of Oscar because you've got his same personality. You're miserable all the time. So we started calling, that's how Paul got the nickname. Those that are close to him, Hulk Hogan calls him Oscar. Steve Kern calls him Oscar. We all call him Oscar. Oscar the Grouch.
I'll give you a couple more then. Loudest spot caller.
Oh, God. I used to hate that. Larry Booker. I had to tell him many a times to be quiet, to quiet up. But Larry was a good wrestler. When they were the Moondogs. Of course, I met Larry in my first territory when he told me that nobody could outshoot the book, and that was in front of Murdoch and Killer Carl Cox. And he never said that again after that. But and then we became friends later. That's when I asked Bill Watts. I said, Bill, you booked me and Larry again, and what happened. I said, I'm not going to be nice again. If something happens, I'm just going to tell you right now. And he goes, well, let me just say this, Brian. He goes, it's impossible for a shoot to hurt the business. And I said, well, okay, that's half the question. But the other half is, do I need to be prepared for that? He said, well, I would always be prepared. So I said, okay. And he put us together, and Larry worked like I don't remember even feeling him. It was just a wonderful match.
This sort of ties into it. The most memorable backstage fight that didn't involve you.
That didn't involve me?
Yeah.
Backstage fight. Wasn't much of a fight, but it's the most memorable is when Jock Rougeau hit actually, Jock is the one that hit Dynamite with the roll of quarters, and we were there again. Of course, Brunzell's the one. Jimmy came and he goes, Brian, you're not going to believe this. Dynamite just got sucker punched by Rougeau, by Jock, with a roll of quarters. There's quarters all over the place. I said, what? And just about that time, Dynamite comes up, his lips bleeding and everything, and he's got a cup of coffee and he's stirring it, and his teeth are out, and he goes, the fucking bastard. And he goes, he sucker punched me with the quarters. He goes, I'm gonna kill him. And I got to give Dynamite credit. for just walking like that after getting nailed, blindsided, full speed with everything that Raymond had to give him. And he was up stirring his coffee, and just talking about what a bastard he was.
Yeah, Jacques, not Raymond.
Ah.
Raymond. Sorry to interrupt. Whose allegiance, or were you just not that interested in either party at the time? Who did you?
Oh, no. We were clearly on the side of the Bulldogs, without a doubt. I mean, I still get along fine. I like Jacques and Ramon. They're very talented people, but that was totally uncalled for. But, never judge a man until you walk 3 moons in his moccasins, as the old Indian proverb goes, James. So I know that they had done a lot of ribs, and you can only push a guy so far sometimes, especially there's certain people that don't like to be ribbed. And the Rougeaus were 2 of those people that didn't like to be ribbed.
And I'll probably end with this one, maybe one more. And this sort of ties in as well. Stiffest / most reckless in a working sense.
Well, for me, it was Vader, because he was my tag team partner often in Japan. And we would be the main event a lot. And if the Japanese were going to go over, Vader wasn't going to do the job, so I had to do the job. And Vader would inevitably do something where he loved to do this finish where I had one of them in a full Nelson. He'd hit the ropes, come off with a clothesline, and obviously the guy reverses it. Vader hits me with the clothesline. Well, he'd hit me so hard with the clothesline, James, I didn't have to try to flip. I mean, he hit me so hard that my whole body just did a 180 on its own. And, you're not supposed to hit, especially someone you're supposed to like, that hard.
With Vader, people will say that, he was working, stiff, strong style Japanese, or was he a bit beyond even that as far as how hard he hit?
In my opinion, he was. Yes, that's my opinion. I mean, you'll get a different opinion from all the guys, and I'm sure that's why you ask these questions, James, is you always get different answers. But for my money, that's who was the stiffest in my book.
Absolutely. We will move on from the game then, and we'll ask, or I will ask, and hopefully you will answer some WWF questions. And I didn't realise until I looked this up today is that you actually spent the majority of 1984 as lower on the card in the WWF as a singles, and then you come back in 1985, spring of 1985, and then you get hooked up with Jim Brunzell. By the way, I thought Minnesota Nice was just like a thing from Fargo. It's like, but Jim's such a nice guy. He was really lovely. You allude to in the book, truth be told, that the hiring of you and the hiring of Jim Brunzell around the same time in 85 was a very deft play by Vince McMahon to hurt 2 other territories at the same time.
Absolutely. To hurt Minnesota, where Jimmy was the tag team champions with Greg Gagne, and they had already taken Hulk Hogan and Bobby the Brain Heenan. And so they came to Florida, and I was the main babyface and Florida heavyweight champion. And we were selling out all over. Rick Rude and I, at this particular time, there was other people that we did good business with. But I got a call from Hulk Hogan, said, Vince wants to know if you want to come up now, because they knew I was waiting to come up, because I was going to come up in singles and wrestle for the Intercontinental belt. And this tag team opportunity came up because Vince wanted to create a really dynamic tag team division, which he did. He did a tremendous job of creating a dynamic tag team division in which people were very, very interested. And so you take these tag teams and you put them on the B. You had the ABC towns, and they'd be in that main event in the B town or the C town or B and C town, and you'd have your Hogans and the A town or Macho Mans, anyway, where was I with Jim?
Vince McMahon hired you and Jim as
Yeah.
tactical maneuvering.
So I said, sure, I'll do that on a, I have to know that I'm getting the belts, that we're getting the belts. And discussed money. Everything was good. Everything was a go. They wanted me to come up immediately. Immediately, and which wasn't going to allow me to give my 2 weeks notice to Mike, and to Florida Championship Wrestling from Florida. And that was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, because I had never not left without giving my 2 weeks notice until then. And I remember on the way down to the show in Fort Myers, it was completely sold out, and I was going to work with Rick Rude, and I think I had already dropped the belt. I'm not sure if I had dropped it or if I still had the belt. I'm not sure at the second. And I had a flat tire, and so I started thinking to myself, wow, I don't feel like going down there now. I'm excited about going to New York, and but I got to call the building. We didn't have cell phones then, but we had the numbers of all the buildings that we were wrestling in. So I called down and left a message to get word to Mike Graham to call me at this particular cell phone right off the interstate after somebody helped me. I told Mike, I said, Mike, I'm broke down, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to be late. And he said, Ryan, there's more people outside than there are inside. Hurry up and please get down here. He said, I'll come up and get you myself. And I said, no, don't do that, please. But I don't know what they did that night. I wound up missing, and Mike didn't speak to me for a year. Later, we became business partners, and other things happened. But I went to New York and didn't look back.
With Vince, I know you're not the biggest fan of Vince McMahon.
Yes, I am.
Oh, are you?
Why would you say that?
Well, because
it's Jimmy Brunzell.
Oh, Jim Brunzell isn't the biggest fan, I know, because he fired him 3 times. I know that. But also, I assumed you weren't that big of a fan.
Vince never, ever fired me, ever. I gave my notice in Salisbury, Maryland when I left. And I did that right before WrestleMania 5. We had been wrestling so many days with not enough days off. They had promised us the belts 3 times. George Scott didn't like Jimmy. Vince didn't like Jimmy. And Jimmy will tell you this. I'm not just talking behind his back. He'll be the first one to tell you this. I didn't know that Jimmy had sued Vince twice before we even became partners, and he won the lawsuits. And so we're going in there in a bad spot. I didn't know that George Scott had fired Jimmy and didn't want him to come back to the Carolinas, and George Scott's the booker. So we've got black eyes in front of us. And then I don't know if you could kind of see this poster off to my right shoulder, but those T-shirts right there, Vince pulls those T-shirts out, and he's so excited. And so I could see the enthusiasm on my boss's face. And so naturally I was enthused, and I looked, yeah, those are awesome. And Jimmy, what is it? I don't get it. He didn't understand it. And so it was just like constantly like that. And so, looking back, I mean, we won the World Heavyweight Championships together in the UWF. It's not the same as the WWFE, but we did do that. And, everybody knows that you're given the belts by the promoters. So we definitely earned the belts. And anybody we worked with, they were all surprised that we never got the belts.
Well, slap on the wrist for me then. I had made an assumption that you weren't a bigger fan of Vince McMahon because you've even mentioned in this interview, well, he lied to me 3 times about winning the titles, and I assumed that was a continuing bone of contention. But is that sort of just like, well, it happens?
No, Vince lied to me coming in because I got the words that I was going to get the belts. And then one time in the middle, but George Scott lied to us 2 times about the belts. But other than that, I have nothing but good things to say about Vince. I mean, Vince and I, I was with Terry a lot, so I was, flying in limousines and right there with him the night before WrestleMania 3. We were together a lot, and Vince was very, very good. He taught me so many things, and I loved his dad. His dad was tremendous, and One of the highest compliments that I ever had in my life is when I wrestled Mr. Wonderful and Vince was an announcer in St. Louis, and um, Chief Jay Strongbow came to Paul and I after the match. I knew we just had a hell of a match. And he said, Caesar wants to see you in his office. And I thought, oh, shit, I knew I shouldn't have dropped that leg on Paul's crotch. So I thought he was going to be mad about that or something, but I knew he couldn't be upset about the match. And we walk in, and Vince's not a touchy-feely guy. And all of a sudden, he's just like smiles. Guys, that's the greatest match I've ever seen in my life. I have never seen a match that good in my life. I was right there. I watched every bit of it, and I swear to you, that was the greatest match I've ever seen in my life. And he grabs us, and he's hugging us, and he's so excited. And it made me feel so good, James. I mean, Paul, too. I mean, Paul was elated because, you know, getting a compliment like that from your boss is a huge compliment. So, Vince knew how to motivate you. And I worked hard for Vince, and I don't know, some things don't always go the way you planned or the way you want them, but the bottom line is I made a lot of money, and I parlayed it into a lot of money. And, you know, being a guy that came from getting busted with food stamps, it makes me happy, and I'm grateful for every booking that I was ever booked there. And I thank Vince all the time. Plus, he's a big supporter of the Cauliflower Alley Club.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say that as well. And we're back. Sorry, I had to pause that slightly. I'm sorry, I'm going to ask the question that I'm sure everybody asks, and you know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to ask it a slightly different way. Iron Sheik, WrestleMania 3, and then 20 years later, he says, break your back, make you humble, blah, 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 blah. He didn't even seem to realise that he had Jim Brunzell in the camel clutch when he made those statements. Was Iron Sheik just running his own angle in this shoot interview? Because it seemed to shock you as much as everyone else.
Well, I think that Sheik got embarrassed because we used to shoot with each other. I mean, you know, WSI, you know, I mean, we'd actually shoot for a couple minutes. And Khosrow was a tremendous hooker, a great shooter. And usually I'd be the guy to tap, quick tap, quick tap. Well, in Hershey, I wound up making the Sheik tap. And he was really, it was right in front of Nikolai. We were close to the corner, and Nikolai started riding his butt. And Sheik didn't like to be ribbed. And so I always thought, you know, that's what he was mad about, because he was hot the whole match. I mean, he was mad at me the whole match. And I said, Sheik, you know, it's your game. You know, I'm just playing the game with you. I played it like a gentleman. You need to play it like a gentleman. Oh, you jabroni, whatever. So it just morphed into more than, and I think at the same time too, he probably, since he was on the Howard Stern show often, which Howard Stern kept calling me, trying to get me on the show. And I just, you know, didn't want those guys beaten, you know, it'd be me against them. And obviously, you know where that would go, James. So anyway, I think that's why he had so much animosity toward me.
Excuse me, frog in my throat. I think he maybe gives this interview in the mid-2000s. And how long after you heard it did you make up? Because I know there was a comedy roast, and you end up, to use the parlance, shooting an angle where he slaps you, and then you both rushed off and da-da-da-da-da. But the guy who sorted that comedy roast out of Iron Sheik said, actually, it was all pre-prepared and everything. But how long in between him making those comments on that DVD and you meeting up with him did you sort of squash the heat, as it were?
You know, to me, James, I really never had heat against Khosrow. You know, I always know that, you know, he looked at things differently, coming from Iran, being one of the Shah's bodyguards at one time, totally having the different mindset, knowing all the things that the guys put him through. Jimmy Brunzell tells some tremendous stories about when Sheik was breaking in Minnesota and some of the things they did to him. And, you know, Orndorff would tell me he opened up a bowling alley and Sheik would bring a big towel, a case of Heineken, and start doing exercises, Hindu squats and all that in his bowling alley parking lot and under the shade tree there. And Finally had to run him off out of the bowling alley, but the Sheik, he's just a character, and you never know what's going through his mind. And so I don't hold anything against him.
No, I wonder if he knows what's going through his mind sometimes, because just words just maybe seem to come out before he even thinks about them.
That's exactly right. A lot of people do that. They don't think before they speak, and words have consequences.
Exactly. We will go to the piece de resistance, the finale of the show that I do every time, or every time when when I don't run out of time, I suppose, is I call it the firing line. It's basically the same as name association. I'm just going to give you a name, and you give me a short form answer of what you think about them, and for the most part, I'm sure you'll say they're all great people. And the first one is Cowboy Bob.
Cowboy Bob Orton, super guy. Loved working with Bob. He's a tremendous mechanic, a good psychologist. And I look forward to seeing him at the Cauliflower Alley Club in September.
Fabulous Moolah.
Fabulous Moolah. I always got along with Moolah. I've heard stories from some of the girls that will defend her to their graves, and some of them that don't like her at all. But she was always very kind to me. So I have not a bad word to say about Moolah.
Dino Bravo.
Dino Bravo was great. I loved Dino. I just can't believe he got hooked up like that in the cigarette world with the Indians like he did. And, Dino was sometimes a little cocky. He was always humble around me, always very nice. Always worked with him many, many times. And, first thing he'd say, all right, don't shoot on me. Don't shoot on me. And then, I'd laugh because he's a strong guy, but I missed Dino.
Eddie Gilbert, who you work with. I should say, I'm sorry, that these are all WWF people that I'm giving you names of. I hadn't realised that you had worked with Eddie Gilbert when you first came into the WWF as a singles in '84, I think.
Did I? I don't remember. I work with so many people that I don't remember, James. When you have over 5,000 wrestling matches, I had somebody come up to me and say, I have your all of your life matches. And I said, oh, great. I'd love to see that. So they had like 1,200 matches, and I'm looking, and I said, I had 1,200 matches in my first 4 years in the business of wrestling, over 300 days a year. And so anyway, it's impossible to get all the matches that you've done overseas. And I spend a lot of my time overseas, a lot of time we used to do the weekends with the IWA, the International Wrestling Alliance in here. This guy put together, Tom Shade, some of the best weekend shows. They'd always be sold out. You do those, go to Japan, even while I was running the Gold's Gyms, even when I was a county commissioner and a politician, I was still working. Herb Abrams, all the matches with her, there's just, all the different countries, just Malaysia, Bonaire, Curacao. I wrestled in a place called Kota Kinabalu on the island of Sabah in Malaysia. And we had a riot there. Frenchie Martin and the Nasty Boys, Killer Bees, Brady Boone, a bunch of guys. I mean, we were fighting our fannies off. I'll never forget in this place. And they wanted to kill the bad guys, but they were thinking they're helping us, and we're all. I mean, it was crazy. But I've been so many places, and from Russia. Russia's amazing to wrestle in. Just so many stories from all around the world.
I'll take it you don't have any stories of Eddie Gilbert then.
I have no Eddie Gilbert stories.
That's fine. Ivan Putski.
Ivan Putski was a road buddy. A lot of people didn't like to ride with Ivan. Ivan ate tons of onions. He was an onion freak. And so a lot of people didn't like to ride with Ivan. He had a little different sense of humor. He was a pretty straight guy. And I'd ride with Ivan, and we rode together for a few months, day in and day out. And I got to really like Ivan. He was always very proud of his boys, Scott, and can't think of his other boy's name. But he was always proud of his boys, and liked to talk about other sports. a real gentleman to me.
Don told me once. I'll harp on Ivan briefly. Is that Don told me once that maybe some people in the locker room were jealous of him, maybe in the early '80s because he was so well featured.
Probably Don would know more than me, because Don was there then. He was like around Ivan a lot more than I was.
Yeah. I'll ask a few more. Bill Eadie.
Bill Eadie, great guy. Just talked to him not long ago. Both him and Barry, super people. Bill Eadie's a school teacher, very dedicated to his pupils. Has a beautiful family. A lot of fun to work with, although he's another stiff guy. Can be very stiff, but he'd never hurt anybody. I mean, he'd never hurt me anyway, or Brunzell, I don't think. You'd have to ask Jimmy, but I know Jimmy would complain sometimes. But I always liked Bill Eadie, the Demolition. I worked with Bill Eadie in singles before the Demolition. Good guy.
Mike McGurk.
Oh, Mike McGurk. What can I say about Mike? I got married to Mike one time. That's right. Yes, we were married for about a year. Mike has got a heart of gold. At that time, we were both too young. She was very, very jealous, extremely jealous. And, we both decided that it was time to part ways. And I left a lot of money behind and took my 17 and a half foot inboard outboard caravel boat, one of my Great Danes, $500 in my Letterman's jacket and some clothes, and left for the Von Erichs in Texas when we split up. But Mike's a good girl. Very good girl.
Tiger Chung Lee.
Oh God. Tiger Chung Lee. He's actually Korean, and big Korean guy. He always wore polo cologne. I'll remember that forever. Always wore polo cologne and very heavy. And Tiger was a nice guy, easy to work with. Not a lot of. It wasn't like working with Bret Hart. It was more like a lot of meat chopping. But, good guy.
I'll end with a few more then, and I'll thank you for your time, George. No, I won't ask for George Scott. Let's go for a bigger name, Ultimate Warrior.
Ultimate Warrior, I was around the Warrior quite a bit, but, we never rode together a lot. He was kind of more of an isolated type person. He did have a few friends that he drove with. I like Jim, and I thought I don't know how he got in and wrestled after he used so much energy in his entrance. That used to blow my mind. But
with difficulty, I believe, is
yeah. He got I think maybe, he had a great gimmick. Sometimes I think he got a bigger push than maybe he should have. If I could say something negative at all. But he nonetheless, some people, he was number one in their eyes. And, he left behind a wonderful family. And I pray that he's in a better place.
Ken Patera.
Ken, crazy. Ooh. Ken Patera and I were in Russia. And he got so drunk, he was my roommate, that we had just gotten paid, and he went to the bar downstairs, and I went out somewhere to eat with some of my newly found Russian friends, and I came back and it was late, and we were in this hotel. Outside there were gypsies trying to get your money, and this was supposed to be one of the nicest hotels in Moscow, right by the Red Square. And I start walking up we're on the third floor of this creaky wooden hotel. I could tell it was made of wood because the steps creaked so bad. You're walking up the creak. I took a couple steps and I start seeing $100 bills. And I start picking up these $100 bills and picking them up, following them, picking them up. And now the wad's getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And it goes straight into my room. And I look, and then there's Ken Patera with his money thing broken wide open, and he's passed out, glasses off to the side of his head, snoring so loud. And anyway, he was so happy because he had every dollar that he was given. And he's just very fortunate that the timing was perfect, because I know those people there, that money would have been gone.
With Ken, did you ever try and test him as far as give him an arm wrestle, or try and take him on at the gym and lift more than him or anything?
Oh, no way, brother. You got to know when to hold him and when to fold him. I wasn't about to compete against Ken Patera, the world's strongest man, in his strength contest.
We'll end with this one then. Captain Lou Albano.
Oh, I love Captain Lou. He was just always, I think Captain Lou was the most fun in the UWF with Herb Abrams. And, he was close with Cyndi Lauper and the Rock and Wrestling Connection. That was a huge thing that really helped, turn wrestling into a white collar sport from a blue collar sport, so to speak. And Lou was just a character always, with the rubber bands. Lou, how do you do that? That's, brother, it's a secret. I can't tell you. It's just how he put all those rubber bands and those needles, those, what do you call those clips?
Safety pins.
Yeah, safety pins through his different parts of his skin. And so, Lou was a character. He'd been around for a long time. And so I always respected my elders.
With Lou, in the mid-'80s when you were with Jim Brunzell, was somebody still giving him a bottle of vodka to enjoy himself with and amuse all the talent for the evening beforehand?
Yes. I would say, I don't know if somebody was giving it to him, but I know that Lou enjoyed his cocktails for sure.
Absolutely.
He didn't have to get out there and work, I guess it just made him more of who he was.
Well, it thins the blood. It makes, it makes for a better show, I suppose.
Yeah, especially if you're getting juice.
Right, so I will leave it there. I will thank you so much for your time. We'll do some final plugs if you want to throw them out there.
Hey, I just want to say to Cella Toys, we're excited about our new action figures. Jimmy and I just signed with Cella Toys, and we'll have new action figures coming out. I know Brian Clark has them. Several people do, and Cella Toys is a very hot new company, fairly new on the scene from England with some tremendous designs. And if you're into action figures, they have got some of the most complete action figures I've ever seen. The most realistic. So we're excited about that. I'm excited about CAC coming up in September. Waiting to, I've got a lot of bookings coming up. So looking forward to seeing people in various towns and cities. And I just thank you, James, for having me on your podcast, beautiful podcast. And I wish you and all your listeners nothing but good things. That's for sure.
Thank you very much. And you forgot the book. You didn't mention the book at the end.
And of course, Truth Be Told, that's available either on Amazon, or you can go to, if you want it autographed, you can go to thekillerbeesstore.net, thekillerbeesstore.net, or thekillerbees.net, either one. And you can get an autograph version, custom autographed, sent to you. And with that said, I'd just like to say I'm looking forward to seeing Flair and Hogan.
That's the one question I forgot to ask you. I'm sorry to keep you.
You wanted to ask me that. See, that's what I said.
I had it written down, man. Oh, I'm sorry. I know we said we were going to stop. I'm so sorry. I've got to ask you this. You were, what was it, 62? No, this isn't in the book, actually. You were 62 or something like that when you had your last match. Ric Flair's coming back at 73. He has a pacemaker. What do you think about that?
Well, I think if Rick were going to die anywhere, he'd want to die in the ring. Terry's had his fair share of surgeries, way too many. And, I'm getting ready to call Terry here in a couple minutes. But I just wish them the very best. I know the fans are the ones that have been really egging it on, that really want to see it, and so it's sparked them. And all I can say is it'll be interesting, and I just pray that they both come out in one piece.
Yeah, well, not to be a negative Nancy, but is this a be careful what you wish for kind of thing?
It could be. It could be. But then again, you never know. You got two of the greatest minds in the business. You never know. You could sure decorate things up and bring things in to create more illusions and uh, create a much better match than most people would even think about.
Um, but I never mentioned Hulk Hogan. Is Hulk Hogan the secret opponent? Is that what you're telling me?
That's what I well, I mean, that's what the rumor is. I don't know that to be a fact.
Where did you hear the rumor?
I read it on the internet.
Oh, did you? I thought maybe you had an inside line.
I do have an inside line, but I mean, that's why I got to call him, make sure I want to make sure it's not Terry. It can't be.
Well, hopefully you've not given something away that you shouldn't have given away there, but maybe you have. Who
I
knows?
don't
But
know that. Again, I don't know that to be fact. I mean, that's what the rumor. That's what I read on the internet. You can look it up right now. Google it.
I will Google it as well. Then I'll tell you what. I'll Google it as soon as I sign off. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Brian, for entertaining us for an hour and so much. I know I've gone a few minutes over, but with the mention of Ric Flair, how could I not go a couple of minutes over?
Oh yeah, I love Ric Flair. He talks about his favorite fight he ever witnessed was Matt Bourne and I, and that's in Truth Be Told. So grab a copy of Truth Be Told, get your Cauliflower Alley tickets, check out Shell of Toys, and by all means, make sure you tune in to listen to James and WSI podcast. I mean, it's been a joy and a pleasure. You come prepared, James, and again, I thank you for allowing me to be on your show, and I wish you and your audience nothing but good things once again.
Thank you very much, and we'll catch you next week.